He is one of the most prolific agents in the history of sports. His client, Bryce Harper, just signed for the richest contract in the history of North American sports. He is none other than Scott Boras. How are you, Scott?
Doing well, Rich, and you?
I am hanging in there. Let's jump right into it. Let's jump right into it, both feet. How come it took so long for the Harper deal to finally get done with the Phillies, Scott?
Well, I think the calendar in baseball has a historical aspect and it has a current aspect. What we're finding is that teams nowadays, with their analytic abyss that they've all ascribed to in November and December, they're just really involved in the trade category, and the free agent markets are really kind of a secondary step after they've determined that their trade categories do not deliver them what they think is going to make them a competitive team. And therefore, really, we have the arbitration process, which takes up in January, and then so free agency kind of begins earnestly in February for most players.
So how has analytics changed what you do, Scott?
A great deal, in the sense that the barometer by which teams evaluate players is less individualized. In Bryce Harper's case, he's had a career where he was rated in one system as having a 1.6 WAR or win value, and in another one having a 3.5. And when you see superstar players that have received contracts like this, their ratings are in the nines for A-Rod a couple times, or for, in the sevens and high eights for Stanton. And so that the fact that he was coming off an injury in 17 and coming into 18, it created a very difficult evaluative process, because you had to essentially overcome a barometer that is now commonly used in the baseball vernacular.
Well, I mean, where do you stand on the subject, Scott Boras, of owners in this league trying to suppress salaries by keeping guys unsigned all the way through to the end of the year, or at least their market value in on other years previous would be higher because of the timing of the signing? I mean, J.D. Martinez didn't sign till the very end last year. You've got Dallas Keuchel, for instance, still sitting out there. Where do you stand on that philosophy?
Well, I think it's definitely injurious to the game. It's the reserve system, which they now enjoy, I think will be clearly examined at length, because the benefits that players provide in a collective bargaining agreement, and that of giving 6 years of control to clubs, and really that turns to 7 years the way they manipulate it. And then for the majority of the free agents, they're 29 to 31 years of age, and now we have a system that denigrates age to a level which isn't really accurate, because there's always 50 good players that are excellent players that play well till their mid or late 30s, but they have created this box and this perception in the marketplace, and I think it's going to do for all players. I think they're frustrated with it, and it's just something that the current CBA has to run its course. But as we move ahead, I think it's something that's going to face real scrutiny as to why a reserve system should continue to operate that doesn't benefit the players.
Now, for those who may not be familiar with the business of the sport, what do you mean by that? I mean, fans are just kind of sitting there saying, hey, Keuchel could certainly fit in my rotation. Or last year, fans are like, why is J.D. Martinez not signing until the very bitter end? I mean, Bryce Harper, again, didn't sign until baseball games were being played in exhibition play, Scott. So can you put that into layman's terms here?
Yeah, no, essentially that you have to have a team's bid on the players, and the team simply, because of the process now where they're trying to make trades, and for the 60 days of November and December, they work on their arbitration process to take care of those players they have under reserve on their contracts through January. And really the bidding process where clubs are I was in Bryce's situation. I met with 6 or 7 new teams in February to discuss his contract, and none of those teams came forward in November or December or January. So it's I'm my process and working as an attorney for the players. You're waiting for the system to come to you and bid for the players so you can make objective analysis and provide counsel to the players on what the market is. And often in these situations, and you're talking about J.D. Martinez, I think, signed late in February, and frankly, his process didn't even begin till mid-February, and he turned out to be one of the most valued players in the league. So it's not about talent, Rich. It's really about the process and what teams are doing to try to mitigate investing in substantial free agent valued players.
Well, I mean, and you just point out that maybe clubs could say, hey, November and December, the way things are set, that's our time to do X, Y, and Z, not sign free agents. And there are some, again, who are alleging that teams are getting together and essentially saying, let's just not talk to free agents until the very end and force them maybe to take a deal that they panic, that they're sitting out there on the street. They're playing games in Florida and Arizona, and they panic. They got kids. They want to know where they're going to school. They got families. So let's use that to our advantage. Would you agree that that is, in fact, happening?
Well, certainly we're seeing a radical change in the last 2 off seasons from how business was done in the past and how it's done currently as this current CBA unfolds. And as to the basis for this change, I think there's going to be a lot of reasons. All I know is that in bargaining, there has been a luxury tax that was imposed back in the 2000s, and it was stated by then Commissioner Bud Selig that this was not a salary cap. This was something that was designed to create parity in the game, and that we're going to have a sharing of revenues from the top clubs to the bottom. And what has occurred is that back in that era, we had one team that lost 95 or more games, and we had one team that won 95 or more games. Well, in 2018, I think we had 8 teams that won that lost more than 95 games, and we've had close to 6 teams now winning over 95 games. So what that means is that there are a lot of teams that have chosen just not to compete, and that may be as many as 8 to 10 a year. And they simply say that winning 85 games is, not something that benefits us, and therefore we're going to cut back our salary, our investment in players by 50, 60 million a year. We'll pocket those resources, and then they tell the fans that this is the reason we do this is because we want to get high draft picks, and that's going to allow us to retool and win more often. And with this non-competitive cancer we have going on and a luxury tax system at the top that prevents teams from really investing in a lot of players, it creates a vice that I think we have to eradicate in bargaining.
A few more minutes left here with Scott Boras on the Rich Eisen Show. It's quick hitter time, Scott. How close were the Nationals to keeping Bryce Harper? Can you tell me?
Well, certainly the Nationals had interest, but they offered a contract structure that had so much deferral in it that, for them and what their structure was with not only Bryce but others, it was just not in the financial marketplace that, Bryce's value was. And so the competitors in the league, I think, pursued Bryce at a much more aggressive level.
Okay. And were there any teams in California that came close, Scott?
Well, there were a lot of teams, Rich, that, this is like I think at a wedding, you don't want to talk about the bridesmaids. So what I do,
I love it.
there are a lot of people interested in Bryce Harper, obviously. Yeah.
Okay, so where do things stand with Dallas Keuchel right now? Is he going out of his mind? What's happening, Scott? Walk me through how close he might be.
Dallas is a professional, and I think a lot of major league players know that this is the nature of the beast in today's world. When you're that talented, it's a product of being that talented, and consequently, we're having a lot of teams contact us and talk with us, and we're hopefully we can put something together for them real soon.
Is that Houston potentially still in this mix, Scott?
Well, I don't want to talk about specifics, Rich, but obviously there's a lot of teams that if they want to win and get to that moment where they're going to have that depth and that kind of talent, and Dallas is one of the best postseason pitchers in the game, and has repeatedly shown that, and so he is very much somebody that a club who has World Series aspirations would want.
Okay, and obviously being in this business that you're in, and as long as you have been in it, I'm sure you've had many an awkward moment or conversation. Where does Kyler Murray talking to the A's to say he's going to play football rank, Scott, in that?
I think the acceleration of Kyler's positioning in football was one that I think everybody was accepting of because of the fact that it's primarily what he wanted to do in sport, and you always want athletes doing what they want to do and what they're passionate about, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it is anything about Kyler's commitment to anyone. It really has a lot to do with the fact that the evolution of his performance as a football player was something that occurred, and then it was something that everyone relooked after he won the Heisman Trophy. So I think everybody involved wants the best for Kyler, and certainly have him achieve what he finds most important to achieve in his athletic career.
Well, I don't think anybody thinks, Scott, that it's anything personal what Kyler did with the A's. To use the same vernacular about you don't want to talk about bridesmaids at a wedding. It's basically somebody saying I'm not as much as into you anymore. And it's not the A's. It's just the sport itself. So the Heisman Trophy was where maybe you started hearing or figuring or assuming or wondering if Kyler was as into baseball anymore?
You sometimes people infer that this is a choice. My thing is, I think you can love contemporary art, and you can love, the many different forms of what your heart tells you at the moment is most valued to you. And so my feeling is that it's not as though you don't enjoy both sports. It's just the reality of being in a football community and having invested in it and being around it and being a part of it, and then listening to all of the gradients that are available to you in your athletic career. You really have you have a business side to it. You have certainly people around you telling you how optimal you can be in a particular sport, and then you have the immediate desire to do what you feel is best for you at that time. So I'm not sure if it's a selection of one sport over the other, as really is what you feel is best for you, and the fact that the key thing is that whatever sport you are playing, you're really passionate about it, and that you're really committed to it, and I think Kyler has pretty much evidenced to all that he's very committed to football.
Well, and again, I'm sure again you've represented Kyler. Is it proper to say that past tense?
Well, yes, I certainly represented him in the draft with baseball. The baseball draft.
Has that door closed? Do you think that baseball door is totally closed for Kyler Murray, Scott Boras?
I think Kyler's focus is totally on football right now.
Okay, and so where do you stand on the subject that was thrown out there by my colleague Charlie Casserly in the NFL Network? I don't know if that pierced what's going on in your baseball representation world. that Kyler's leadership skills were lacking in an interview session at the Combine or sessions at the Combine, knowing Kyler as you do?
You know, Kyler's uncle Calvin, who I've known since 16, and I've known Kyler's father Kevin for a long, long time, and both of these, one's a major leaguer, one was a collegiate quarterback at Texas A&M, and these men have proven to be leaders over time. And when I listen, and I think the best evidence of Kyler is his football coach. You know, he went from 0 to the Heisman Trophy, and his coach reveres about him. His teammates welcome him and really speak highly of him. Those are the things in my mind that are most, because those are the people that spend everyday life with Kyler, and when a team respects you, and when your coach respects you, and the people that you've been around the most have the highest regard for you, I would tend to say that has more really weighting evidence of who Kyler is as opposed to a 15-minute interview.
All right, and last one for you, Scott. I know how you feel about the shift. You call it anti-lefty. I'm fully in agreement with you. The Atlantic League is instituting a whole bunch of other changes into their play. I'm going to give you a choice of 3. I wave the wand. Scott Boras can make it happen in Major League Baseball. I give you the choice between a reliever can only face must face at least 3 batters, pitch clock, or moving the mound back to 62 feet 6 inches, as this league is going to do in the second half of its season.
Well, when I played baseball, I never wanted to leave the ballpark and go 0 for 3, but I'm 0 for 3 in all of those. So,
you don't want any of them.
I don't think we want to. You know, we're training pitchers, and if you move the mound back 2 feet, and they're breaking balls and what they do and all those things, you're going to disrupt the training process, because you got to get youth in the game, Rich. I mean, when you move a youth arm, and youth is where you get the foundations for your field to pitch. Right. So when you move the mound back 2 feet, you're now stressing a young arm and putting more. You're compounding the problem of arm strength. You're compounding the problem of them getting readied for the next level, and all of a sudden, when you have one mound at one length and another mound at another, between the ages of 15 and 18, and then they go to college and all the other things, I just don't think that is a way to in any way aid the game. We've got to have consistency. We've got to have these young men throwing from the same distance, and we certainly don't want to lengthen it, because we're having enough arm problems in the game as it is.
Scott, always love our chats, really do, and I look forward to seeing you at a ballpark in Southern California in short order. Look forward to seeing that.
Always a pleasure, Rich, and give Susie my best.
Thank you, Scott. She wants me to send you her best as well. That's Scott Boras, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.